Flight 217 sliced through the cold American sky like a silver whisper, the engines humming with the kind of confidence only thousands of safe flights could build. It was supposed to be ordinary, a flight full of families tired from travel, businessmen pretending they weren't afraid of turbulence, college kids with oversized headphones drowning out the world. A flight where the loudest drama was someone reclining their seat too far back. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing story-worthy. Just air, clouds, and the soft promise of landing. But ordinary things can change faster than gravity allows time to argue. The cabin was dim, that comfortable half-light airlines used to convince people the world is calm. But in seat 14C, calm didn't exist. Not even close. She sat like someone glued into a memory she couldn't escape. Dark hair tied back with purpose, not vanity. Shoulders straight like old habits wouldn't let them slouch. Eyes fixed toward the window, not looking at the blue sky but watching it. Like the sky was an enemy. Or maybe a past life she'd sworn never to face again. Nobody knew her. She made sure of that. No conversation. No friendly small talk. No smile to make herself seem approachable. She handed her boarding pass with quiet politeness, nodded when asked to buckle her seatbelt, and disappeared into silence as if she belonged there. A flight attendant had tried earlier. "First time flying with us?" she'd asked softly. "Yes," the woman replied. Not first time flying, just first time with this airline, and the way she said it carried a weight that warned the attendant not to ask more. Minutes passed, air stabilized, people relaxed deeper into their seats. But she didn't relax. She didn't sleep. She didn't blink too long. Because her instincts wouldn't let her. She knew the rhythm of a plane when things were right. She knew the subtle vibrations of healthy engines, the tone of confident pilots, the tempo of communication happening behind a locked cockpit door. The sky spoke in patterns, and somewhere inside her chest, skill layered under trauma told her the pattern was breaking. A sound inside the cabin shifted, not loud, not obvious, but wrong. Conversation faded without anyone meaning to stop talking. That strange, collective unease spread, the kind where nobody knows why they're nervous, only that something suddenly feels fragile. Then the soft ding echoed through the cabin. Most people ignored it. But her spine went rigid. It wasn't the kind of chime passengers ever feared, but she knew better. Some tones weren't about passenger comfort. Some tones weren't routine. Some tones meant someone wasn't sure everything was okay. The captain's voice followed, smooth, professional, trained to never betray truth. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may experience a brief communication delay. Nothing to worry about. Please remain seated and we'll keep you updated." People shrugged. Someone laughed like the announcement was entertainment. A teenager rolled his eyes. Someone joked about Wi-Fi being down again. But the woman in 14C felt something sink inside her chest. Communication delay. That wasn't nothing. Not when the sky had shadows. Her hand tightened around the armrest until her knuckles lightened. She forced herself to breathe, slow and controlled, like training never really leaves the body it shaped. Her jaw flexed. Her pulse wasn't frantic, it was disciplined. Elevated because it understood the stakes, not because it was surprised. She had lived too close to this world to ever believe in coincidences at 30,000 feet. A subtle tremor whispered through the plane, not turbulence, not wind. A vibration of uncertainty. The kind engine crews feel in their bones. A whisper of electronics not syncing the way they should, signals hesitating when sky communication should be absolute. Passengers still chatted, still trusted, still believed normal was guaranteed. She knew better. Her eyes flicked to the wing, perfect, clean, stable. Her chest didn't ease. Because danger doesn't always come from wings. Sometimes it comes from silence. She closed her eyes for just 1 second. "Please don't let it be this. Please don't let it be today. But the universe never negotiates with people trying to outrun past lives. The aircraft's atmosphere thickened, not physically, emotionally. The way rooms feel when someone knows something they aren't allowed to say. The way air feels just before news breaks. The quiet before a storm acknowledges itself. And then she felt it. Before she saw it. Before anyone spoke. A presence. Power. Speed that wasn't commercial. Precision that didn't belong to civilian skis. Her breath stopped halfway. Not turbulence. Not weather. Something else was in their sky. Something that wasn't supposed to be near commercial passengers, unless there was reason. Her fingers curled tighter. No, not this, not here, not again. She looked left. At first there was only blue, open freedom, endless horizon, peaceful, harmless sky. Then something cut through it. Vast. Silent. Predatory. A blur of metal slicing the atmosphere like the sky itself bowed out of respect. Her heart didn't jump. It locked. Fighter jet. Close. Too close. Following. Escorting. Or warning. Outside, sunlight reflected off a sharp, angular body, stealth, lethal elegance, unmistakable silhouette carved from American power. Anyone who ever knew planes would recognize it instantly. F-22. Not a rumor, not a distant speck. Right there. Close enough to remind this commercial aircraft of its vulnerability. Passengers hadn't seen it yet. Angle saved them from panic, for now. But inevitability always reveals itself. Planes don't get company like that unless someone thinks something is wrong. Someone. No. The United States Air Force. Meaning this wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a joke. Something serious enough to scramble Raptors was unfolding. Her throat tightened. And the worst part wasn't fear for herself. It was familiarity. She'd seen this before. She sat in different seats. Different aircraft. Different uniforms. Different life. But the ending had carved scars she never outran. Memories flashed alarms, shouts through headsets, metallic taste of adrenaline, hands gripping controls too hard, sky turning into enemy, lives hanging not by systems, but by humans holding onto hope with shaking hands. Not again. Please God, not again. She swallowed hard, grounding herself, feet planted, shoulders squared. She forced oxygen back into her lungs like courage was something you inhale on command. Calm. Stay calm. Assess. Think. This wasn't the moment to panic. This was the moment to become the version of herself she swore she buried years ago. Behind her, a child's voice slowly broke through the quiet. Mom, look. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Gasps rippled like falling dominoes. The cabin changed. No more jokes. No more casual chatter. No more pretending. Every heart in that aircraft understood something without needing explanation. Fighter jets don't appear beside peaceful flights, unless peace isn't guaranteed. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone swore quietly. Someone reached for a stranger's hand. Fear travels fast. But in seat 14C, she didn't tremble. She burned. Because this wasn't just happening to passengers. This sky had called her again. And she knew deep inside. It wasn't finished yet. Then, somewhere just beyond the cockpit door, another chime echoed. Not routine. Not reassuring. A sound no civilian understood. But she did. And the sky felt like it stopped breathing. The chime from the cockpit door was different this time. Not the polite, soft ping of a system alert. This was deliberate, a subtle vibration under the metal frame of the plane that hinted at tension, The kind pilots feel when something is already wrong but they haven't yet identified the scale. The passengers didn't notice it at first. The child behind the woman continued poking at a screen. A man across the aisle adjusted his tie. Life pretended normal. But she felt it immediately. Her entire body tensed, every nerve standing at attention. Years of training, missions, and classified operations told her what no one else could yet know. The ordinary hum of Flight 217 was about to fracture. She leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing. Her fingers dug into the armrest. She didn't need to see the cockpit, didn't need the captain to tell her anything. She could feel the energy shift in the air. "Something's coming," she whispered, barely audible, and immediately regretted it. Words are dangerous in the wrong context, and even whispers can travel too far when tension hangs in the cabin like thick smoke. The captain's voice broke through next, calm but layered with subtle strain. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing minor communication issues. Please remain calm. The situation is under control." The passengers nodded, oblivious. A woman across the aisle adjusted her scarf and smiled nervously. Someone chuckled about Wi-Fi being down again, but she didn't relax. Minor communication issues. No, not minor. She had seen what minor looked like when the wrong people were involved. Systems glitching, radios stuttering, instruments flickering. All were indicators that someone was testing the limits of control, probing weaknesses, or worse, targeting the flight. She exhaled slowly, keeping her own panic buried deep. Not for herself. For everyone else. Somewhere above, invisible to the commercial eyes glued to the tiny windows, radar screens lit up. Commands were being relayed. Jets were already climbing. F-22 Raptors lifting from their home base with precision timing. Not because Flight 217 was in trouble, at least not yet, but because someone had noticed the wrong pattern. Someone had decided that the ordinary flight was now a battlefield. The cabin remained peaceful in appearance. A steward passed by, refilling water glasses, humming a tune. People typed on laptops, scrolled on phones, yawned. No one understood the gravity that hung over them, the quiet war being waged in invisible airspace. She swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at her that the danger was closer than anyone imagined. Her mind raced, running checklists she hadn't needed in years. Mental procedures, safety protocols, tactical maneuvers, patterns ingrained in muscle memory. She could guide this aircraft if necessary. She could save them, but she didn't want to be here. She hadn't been invited back. Not into this life. Yet the sky had a memory longer than humans dared admit. A shadow flickered across the window, the kind that makes you instinctively duck even when nothing is physically there. Her eyes followed it. High above, at impossible speed, the F-22s cut through clouds like predators. Sunlight gleamed off their stealth surfaces, painting sudden metallic streaks across the cabin windows. Passengers began noticing. Murmurs swelled into whispers. A child pointed. Gasps punctuated the air. Some scrambled to pull their phones up for pictures, unaware that the jets were more than spectacle. They were guardians and enforcers at once, silent watchers of a story too complicated for the untrained eye. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She only tightened her grip on the armrest and exhaled through her nose, slow, measured. Not fear, control. Because this wasn't the first time she had seen this scene. Her lips moved slightly, forming a word she didn't intend for anyone else to hear. Again. She had saved planes before, saved lives, directed others without recognition, without applause. The quiet kind of heroism that disappears into memory, into classified reports, into the folders of people who aren't allowed to know your name. Her gaze drifted toward the cockpit. The crew inside were professionals, trained to handle turbulence, technical issues, and passenger emergencies, but not whatever this was. Not the subtle precision of military intervention intersecting with civilian vulnerability. not a silent warning in the shape of a jet that could erase the plane from existence in moments. The captain's voice came again, tighter this time. Flight 217, we have a communication request from military authorities. Stand by. Passengers did not understand the urgency of the phrase. Stand by, calm, polite, non-threatening. But in aviation and in the world she inhabited, those two words carried a quiet terror. Stand by, prepare for anything. Someone is watching, someone is judging, someone may act without warning. She closed her eyes for 1 second, just one, and replayed the memory that haunted her. A previous mission, a plane, a shadow, a call she made that saved hundreds, the rush of adrenaline, the helplessness of civilians, the quiet thankfulness afterward that never became headlines, never became applause, never became peace. Her chest tightened. The memory wasn't just memory, it was a warning. Because what had come once could come again, and this time it had. She heard a subtle shift, a soft thrum through the aircraft's metal spine. Not turbulence, not mechanical, external, calculated. Someone or something was testing the plane's reactions, watching, waiting, calculating. Her pulse remained steady, but her mind raced through scenarios, worst case, probable, possible, every path traced and retraced. She needed to act, she needed to anticipate. Flight attendants moved closer, sensing tension but not understanding it. Passengers leaned forward, craning necks. Phones rose, some attempting video. The sky outside seemed ordinary again, clouds drifting like cotton, sun scattering golden light over the wing. Peaceful, calm, but she knew better. She had learned to read the world behind appearances, to see what others could not. She shifted slightly in her seat, slow, deliberate, making sure the movements appeared casual. Her hand reached into the small pouch beside her, retrieving a folded document, an old flight manifest, expired military credentials, nothing outwardly threatening, but a tangible reminder to herself that she could act if required. A subtle vibration ran through her teeth as the plane adjusted its altitude. Not pilot input, not autopilot, external, someone influencing systems without warning. Passengers began whispering now, fear spreading quietly but visibly. Eyes darted. People held hands, gripped armrests. Anxiety traveled faster than the engines could. She kept her focus on the sky. Not the plane, not the instruments, not the passengers, the sky itself. And through that focus she sensed the Raptor pilots closing in. 2 F-22s, not casual escorts, precision, authority, warning, and now confirmation. She knew them, not personally, but by the discipline, the timing, the exact flight pattern of American pilots who had once answered a call she had made. Her stomach twisted. The word again returned. It wasn't coincidence. Someone somewhere had triggered a chain reaction that intersected with her life, her past, her expertise, and the lives of everyone on Flight 217. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. Not yet, not yet. The turbulence outside intensified, but only slightly, enough to unsettle passengers, enough to send nervous glances through aisles, but she knew the real turbulence wasn't outside. It was coming from above. The cockpit door chimed again, this time sharp, deliberate, impossible to ignore. And with it, Flight 217 teetered on the edge of a story that no one aboard would ever forget, and one she had lived long enough to fear returning to. Because when the door opened, the sky would demand her voice. And for the first time in years, she realized the silence she had preserved so carefully, her quiet, protective armor, would have to break. The passengers would witness only the calm exterior. But inside, the storm was already raging. And in that instant, every eye on her, though unknowing, was about to depend on her expertise to survive the unseen battle racing just beyond the clouds. The shadow appeared first as a subtle streak across the cloud line, almost imperceptible to anyone without trained eyes. A glint of metal, sharp and deliberate, cutting the sunlight like a knife through silk. Passengers leaned forward instinctively, some pressing faces to windows, others whispering anxiously. Yet most didn't see what she saw. The unmistakable silhouette of two F-22 Raptors slicing through the stratosphere, wings taut, surfaces glinting with the authority of air superiority. Her breath caught not in fear but in recognition. She had trained alongside these machines, communicated with pilots who had flown them in combat zones she was not supposed to discuss, saved planes in situations civilians would never imagine. And now they were here, watching, waiting. The first jet shifted its course slightly, maintaining a precise formation alongside Flight 217. The second mirrored it, every move synchronized as if choreographed. They weren't hostile, at least, not yet. But the intent was clear. These were guardians, sent because someone somewhere had decided that ordinary safety was no longer enough. She leaned slightly forward, eyes fixed on the shadowed forms beyond the window. Her instincts, honed over years of classified missions, screamed at her that this wasn't coincidence. The sequence of events, the plane's minor system irregularities, the unusual chime from the cockpit, the sudden appearance of Raptors, was deliberate. It was orchestrated. Passengers began murmuring, pointing, phones lifting to capture footage. "Are those fighter jets?" a man asked nervously, gripping the armrest. A child pressed her forehead to the window pane, fascinated, unaware of the tension that suffused the cabin. She didn't flinch. She only tightened her grip on the armrest, inhaling slowly. Every muscle in her body was alive, alert. She didn't need to explain what she knew, but she did know. The flight crew, though professional, was out of their depth. The pilots were capable of handling technical anomalies and turbulence, but these were human-made signals, calculated intrusions into civilian airspace. "Not yet," she whispered again, almost inaudibly. "Not yet." They were testing, assessing, measuring. Someone wanted to see how Flight 217 would respond before acting. She could feel it in her bones, the same intuition that had saved countless lives in the past, a sixth sense born from experience the world had never seen. She glanced toward the cockpit door. The captain was trying to remain composed, but tension radiated from every gesture. His hands moved over the controls with the precision of trained professionals, but his eyes betrayed him. He had never dealt with a situation like this, and the subtle clues of danger, the micro-adjustments, the unspoken urgency, were alien to him. The woman didn't hesitate. She shifted slightly, careful not to alarm the passengers, and reached into the pouch at her side. Her fingers touched a set of old credentials folded neatly. Not that she needed them now. She didn't need paperwork to command attention, not here. Not now. Her presence alone carried weight, the authority born from experience, from missions classified beyond civilian understanding, from life-and-death decisions made in silence. Her gaze returned to the sky. The F-22s were closer now, moving with the kind of precision that only pilots of elite skill could muster. They were silent predators, engines muted to the casual observer, but unmistakable to someone who knew the language of aviation. Passengers were beginning to panic, though few admitted it. The murmurs grew louder, whispers of disbelief and curiosity intertwining with fear. Flight attendants tried to maintain composure, offering smiles and gestures of reassurance, but their hands shook slightly. Even trained professionals could feel the tension that now filled the cabin, the kind of tension that made hair stand on end and hearts pound faster than engines. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Calmness was not just a choice, it was a necessity. One misstep, one panic-stricken reaction could escalate the situation beyond recovery. She had learned this lesson before, in missions that demanded absolute control over chaos, in skis where the difference between life and death was measured in milliseconds. Then came the subtle, almost imperceptible shift, a vibration under the plane's frame that was not turbulence, not mechanical failure, something external, calculated, precise. She felt it in her teeth, in her chest, in the low hum beneath her feet. Someone was manipulating systems, testing the aircraft's response, measuring its limits. Her pulse didn't race. It didn't need to. She was prepared. She had to be. The cockpit door chimed again, this time with urgency. Not a casual alert, but a deliberate signal. The crew froze for a fraction of a second, the kind of pause that decides futures. The woman's eyes narrowed. She knew what this meant. She had trained for it. She had lived it. The captain's voice broke through next, tighter now, betraying strain despite professional cadence. Flight 217, we have a communication request from military authorities. Stand by. Passengers whispered nervously, not comprehending the gravity of the words. Stand by. Calm, polite. But in aviation, in situations where lives intersected with military precision, those words were warnings. She exhaled, closing her eyes for 1 second. Memories flooded back, flashes of previous missions where planes had been compromised, where communication delays had meant the difference between survival and disaster. She had navigated these crises before, guided aircraft to safety, saved passengers without recognition, without applause, without ever being able to tell anyone what had truly happened. Her chest tightened as the Raptor shadows grew clearer outside. The first jet adjusted its formation, moving with a fluidity that suggested it was waiting for a signal, scanning for compliance. The second mirrored the movement, their synchronization unmistakable. She recognized the patterns instantly, the same flight choreography she had memorized during years of collaboration with elite pilots. Her stomach twisted. Recognition was never comforting in situations like this. This was not a drill. This was not an accident. Someone somewhere had triggered events that intersected with her life, her skills, and the lives of everyone aboard Flight 217. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. Not yet, not yet. The turbulence outside increased, subtle but unnerving. Not enough to alarm a seasoned pilot, but enough to unsettle passengers. Nervous glances exchanged across aisles, hands gripping armrests, breaths shallow. The sky appeared calm to the untrained eye, but she knew better. The storm was not outside, it was approaching from above, from the invisible forces now directing this flight. And then the cockpit door chimed once more. This time, sharp, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Her muscles coiled. Every instinct screamed readiness. Every memory of past missions sharpened her focus. The silence of the cabin contrasted with the urgency she felt internally. Passengers remained unaware, still clutching seats, watching the clouds, unaware that the future of this flight hung in balance between elite pilots, a silent passenger, and the invisible threats orchestrating the sky above. She leaned slightly forward, ready. Her presence alone would soon matter more than any manual, any procedure, any protocol. Because when the door opened, the quiet would break. And when the quiet broke, Flight 217 would never be ordinary again. The shadow jets outside, precise and deliberate, continued their approach, silent hunters in the stratosphere. And somewhere beyond the clouds, the world was watching. She exhaled slowly, steady, unshakable. The moment had arrived. And for the first time in years, she would answer the call she had spent her life trying to forget. The cockpit door slid open with a mechanical whine that seemed louder than it had any right to be, echoing through the quiet cabin like a gunshot. Every eye turned instinctively, hearts hitching, fingers tightening on armrests. Flight 217's passengers were suddenly aware that something was not just wrong, but extraordinary, unprecedented, and terrifyingly immediate. Inside, the captain's face was pale, taut with controlled panic. His hands hovered over the controls, ready to respond to any anomaly, yet frozen by uncertainty. The first officer mirrored him, eyes darting between instruments and the now slightly harsh sunlight spilling through the cockpit windows. This was no ordinary communication delay. Then she stood. The woman in 14C, previously the quietest passenger on the plane, moved with a calm precision that cut through the rising fear like a blade. Every motion deliberate, every step controlled. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. She wasn't a passenger anymore. She was something else, someone else. Flight attendants instinctively stepped forward, trained to manage emergencies, but unprepared for this. "Ma'am, please remain seated," one said, voice firmer than usual. She shook her head slowly. "I can help," she said, voice low, yet carrying an authority that made the steward hesitate. She didn't ask permission. She didn't explain. She simply assumed command because she had earned the right to, earned it in skis and missions no one aboard this plane would ever read about. Passengers noticed the change immediately. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is she? What does she mean? Why is she moving toward the cockpit? Her gaze didn't waver from the open cockpit door. She didn't scan the aisle, didn't glance at terrified families. She moved toward the source of the problem with the precision of someone trained to assess, to control, to act. The captain swallowed, swallowing more than fear, swallowing disbelief. He'd handled emergencies before, engine failures, medical crises, storm deviations, but nothing prepared him for a passenger asserting herself with a calm he could feel even from behind the controls. The woman reached the cockpit door. Her hand hovered over the frame. For a brief moment she paused, not hesitation, but assessment. She needed to understand the crew's state of mind, gauge their reactions, and integrate herself without causing panic. Then she spoke. "I have clearance," she said. The words were simple, not loud, not dramatic, but the cadence, the authority, the implicit meaning behind them, all of it carried weight beyond civilian comprehension. The captain blinked. A flicker of recognition passed across his features. He didn't know her personally. He didn't need to. The confidence in her posture, the calm control in her voice, and the subtle cues of military experience were enough. A pause stretched between them, the kind of silence that could determine life or death. "Identify yourself," he finally said, keeping his voice professional but tight. Not her name, not a civilian identifier. Instead, she produced codes. Brief, precise, familiar to anyone who had worked with military command but foreign to commercial airline personnel. The first officer froze mid-action, trying to reconcile instruments, protocols, and the unspoken knowledge now filtering through the cockpit. She didn't wait for validation. Her eyes flicked to the F-22s outside, their silhouettes clear now in the descending sun. Guardians, sentinels, yet not hostile, at least not yet. Their presence demanded respect, obedience, but also recognition. The captain's hands flexed around the yoke. "How?" he began. "I've handled situations like this before," she said, cutting him off gently. "No arrogance, no drama, just fact, just command." Her words hung in the air and the cabin felt it. Passengers shifted, unsure whether to look out the window or at the woman who now carried the weight of their collective survival. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't making excuses. She was prepared. A subtle vibration ran through the floor, a warning, not turbulence. External forces manipulating systems. Her jaw tightened. She could feel the calculations being made by whoever was targeting this flight. They weren't interested in delay. They were testing, probing, assessing. "Ma'am," the first officer said, voice low and hesitant, if you can." She nodded once. "I can guide you, but we need to move now." The F-22s adjusted their formation, closer now, precision so tight that even a misstep could have been catastrophic. Their pilots were professionals, of course, elite and disciplined, but now they hesitated. They recognized the voice on the radio, or rather, the authority behind it. Something familiar, something once vital in combat zones, something that commanded attention without explanation. Inside the cabin, passengers were finally beginning to see the metal predators outside, sleek and lethal, but also strangely protective. Gasps turned to whispers. Whispers turned to murmurs of awe, cameras lifted. phones recorded, and in 14C she remained calm, focused, prepared. The captain finally nodded, decision made. His professional respect outweighed protocol. He opened the radio frequency, waiting for her guidance. And then she spoke into the headset, a single clear call sign long unused in official channels rolling off her tongue like a command. The F-22 pilots heard it instantly. Recognition, awe, fear, all mingled in rapid succession. For a fraction of a second, the jets faltered in formation, as though acknowledging a superior presence. And then, in perfect synchronization, they maintained their positions, their mission now realigned under her implicit command. She didn't shout instructions. She didn't make dramatic gestures. She simply spoke, every word measured, every syllable deliberate, and the world, both inside and outside Flight 217, adjusted around her. The passengers remained unaware of the full gravity of the situation. They saw only a calm, composed woman, moving with purpose, guiding the flight crew. They didn't see the storm of calculations, of experience, of life-and-death decision-making that rippled through her mind. Her eyes flicked again to the sky. The F-22s were close now, close enough to be part of the flight's atmosphere, yet distant enough to maintain the illusion of civilian safety. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself, channeling every lesson from years spent saving planes, saving people, surviving missions that no one else would ever know about. The first officer finally spoke, voice tentative but steady. "Ma'am, if you can do what I think you can, you may just save this flight." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for the console controls lightly, placing her hands over instruments as though she could guide them with presence alone. Systems responded smoothly, the vibrations in the aircraft subsiding just slightly. The jets outside mirrored her calm, maintaining protective positions while waiting for further instructions. The passengers noticed the subtle shift. Air felt less tense, though anxiety lingered like a shadow. The murmurs grew quieter, curiosity overtaking fear for some, but she didn't acknowledge them. She couldn't. Her focus was entirely on the cockpit, the sky, the unseen forces at play, and the responsibility she had assumed without question. Then she looked at the captain, straight into his eyes, not demanding, not pleading, commanding. "Trust me," she said. And for the first time, the man behind the controls did. The cabin exhaled collectively, though no one realized it yet. The danger wasn't gone. The Raptor pilots remained vigilant, adjusting for unseen threats. Systems were stabilizing but not fully secure. Every second counted. Every decision mattered. And then she whispered, almost to herself, but loud enough for the captain to hear. "This isn't over." Passengers leaned forward instinctively, sensing the gravity of her tone, though they couldn't understand why. Fear and curiosity intertwined. Cameras lifted again. Some silently prayed. A child's fingers gripped a parent's sleeve. The sky held its breath. And in that frozen, cinematic moment, everyone on Flight 217 understood something vital. The quiet passenger in 14C was not just a traveler. She was the difference between ordinary and survival. And what came next would test all of them. The cabin of Flight 217 had shifted from ordinary hum to tense anticipation. Passengers, still unaware of the full story, were beginning to sense that the quiet woman in 14C was extraordinary. Flight attendants watched, uncertain, hands frozen mid-motion. The child behind her clutched his mother's sleeve tightly, eyes wide, sensing more than he could understand. Yet for her, this was familiar territory. Her eyes, steady and unblinking, locked on the cockpit instruments. Systems stabilized slightly under her guidance, but the external danger, the reason the F-22s had been scrambled, was still unresolved. She could feel the calculations in her mind. Trajectories, altitude, fuel consumption, radio chatter, the silent language of fighters moving above them. Every variable mattered, and mistakes weren't forgiven at 30,000 feet. Her hand brushed against the headset lying on the console. She lifted it carefully, her fingers brushing the worn plastic as though it were a lifeline she had not touched in years. "Flight 217, she said calmly, voice firm, precise, every syllable deliberate. "This is Iron Viper. Request immediate acknowledgement from all military channels." The cockpit fell silent. The captain and first officer froze, not out of disbelief, but because her voice carried authority beyond protocol. They knew enough to recognize that she wasn't improvising. She had been here before. She had saved lives before. She knew the skis in ways they could not. Outside, the two F-22 pilots reacted instantly. Recognition passed between them over encrypted channels. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a misidentification. "It's her," one pilot breathed. "Iron Viper, it's really her." The recognition was audible even through the radio. Their voices, normally disciplined and controlled, carried awe, disbelief, and something more profound, fear. Not fear of her, but fear of the history she carried. Every maneuver, every calculated decision she made in past missions had saved lives, and they knew it. And now, years later, she was back, quietly commanding a commercial aircraft like it was a fighter jet in combat. The woman's eyes didn't leave the controls. She was aware of the passengers, aware of the flight attendants, but her mind was entirely in the present danger. She could feel the external pressure, the invisible hand manipulating this flight, the reason the Raptors were here. "Military command," she said into the headset, steady and clear. "The flight is secure for now. I need clearance for full intervention. Repeat, clearance for full intervention." The radio crackled, for a heartbeat silence. Then sharp, commanding voices responded. "Iron Viper, acknowledge protocol, confirm identity." She exhaled slowly, every movement calculated, every word mattered. "This is Iron Viper, identity verified. I am authorized to direct flight operations and coordinate with escort fighters. I repeat, I am authorized." The response was instantaneous. "Acknowledged. Maintain position and await further instructions. F-22 assets en route to intercept threat." Her jaw tightened. Threat wasn't gone. It wasn't neutralized. The Raptors were guardians, yes, but they couldn't eliminate the unknown danger without her coordination. She had to act. The first officer glanced at the captain. "Ma'am, are you certain you know what you're doing?" She didn't look at him. She simply nodded, voice low but unwavering. "I've handled situations like this before. Follow my lead." Her hands moved over the controls with measured precision. Small adjustments, subtle but effective, realigning the plane's trajectory to ensure stability while maintaining optimal altitude for the escort fighters. Outside, the F-22s mirrored her adjustments, their pilots trusting her implicitly. In the cabin, passengers noticed the subtle shift. Turbulence seemed to ease. Whispers softened. Confidence, strange and unexplained, radiated from 14C, easing fear without explanation. Then a subtle vibration ran through the aircraft, a warning of external interference. She recognized it immediately. Electronic disruption, intentional, precise, probing Flight 217 systems. Her eyes narrowed. Whoever was behind this knew the flight's schedule, knew its route, knew its altitude. This wasn't random, it was targeted. Raptors, intercept vectors Delta 5 and Delta 7. Visual confirmation only. Avoid engagement unless instructed, she instructed over the secure channel. Her voice was calm, detached, yet imbued with authority that brooked no hesitation. Outside, the jets adjusted instantly, silent guardians awaiting the signal. She could feel the tension in the pilots' formations, the taut discipline mirrored in her own nerves. This was a ballet of survival, precise and unforgiving. The cabin was oblivious to the life-and-death orchestration unfolding just beyond their windows. Flight attendants murmured reassurances. Passengers whispered about the fighter jets. Phones lifted to record. The child pressed his nose against the window, fascinated by the gleaming forms above. She didn't flinch, she didn't panic. Her mind raced through worst-case scenarios, calculating variables with a speed and precision that defied ordinary human capability. She traced each potential path of danger, predicting the enemy's possible moves, ensuring that Flight 217's trajectory remained safe. The first officer spoke again, hesitant but necessary. "Ma'am, we're stable for now, but the systems, there's interference. We've got multiple alerts." Her eyes flicked over the instruments, then to the headset. "I know, keep flying, trust me. We can't let panic dictate actions. Precision saves lives, not fear." The captain swallowed hard, nodding subtly. He had no idea who she really was, what she had done, or what she could do, but the confidence in her movements, the clarity in her voice, and the implicit authority forced trust. She adjusted the plane's attitude slightly, guiding them through micro-corrections that restored stability without alarming passengers. The Raptors mirrored each adjustment, maintaining protective formation as they waited for the next instruction. Then came a crackle over the secure line. The F-22 pilots spoke together, voices taut but reverent. "Iron Viper, you're giving commands we haven't heard since. Impossible." She didn't respond verbally. Her attention was on Flight 217 and the unseen threat. The acknowledgement was enough. Mutual understanding passed silently. The Raptors trusted her judgment completely. The cabin remained tense but stable. Passengers noticed the shift in the plane's movement, subtle but perceptible. Drinks stopped sloshing. Conversation ceased. Even the child behind her was silent, sensing without understanding that something extraordinary was happening. She exhaled slowly, keeping her pulse steady, calculating every possibility in real time. This wasn't a rehearsal. This wasn't theory. Every decision, every word, every adjustment could mean survival or disaster. And then she realized something. The external threat wasn't merely a test. It was deliberate, a challenge, a probe. Someone wanted to see if Flight 217 could be controlled under pressure, and she was the only one capable of ensuring it could. Her voice returned to the headset, calm but commanding. "Raptors, maintain positions. Prepare for vector adjustments. Any deviation from protocol triggers immediate corrective action. Flight 217 is under my guidance." Outside, the jets adjusted, perfect synchronization. The pilots trusted her implicitly. Inside, passengers whispered, unaware that their survival depended entirely on the quiet woman in 14C, a presence that radiated authority and skill beyond civilian comprehension. She exhaled once more, steadying herself. She had regained control of the flight's immediate destiny, but the larger danger, the reason the jets were here, the reason the systems had been tampered with, was still unresolved. And deep inside she knew, the real challenge hadn't begun yet. The sky outside was calm, deceptive. The sun glinted off the wings of the Raptor jets. The passengers smiled nervously, pointing, filming. But she didn't see the calm. She saw the storm yet to come. And in that instant she understood fully. Flight 217 wasn't just being escorted. It was being tested. And only she could ensure it survived. The moment of truth was approaching, silent, precise, and deadly, and when it arrived, no one aboard would remain ordinary again. The sky outside Flight 217 had regained a deceptive calm, but she knew better. Calm, she had learned, was often a prelude to chaos. The two F-22 Raptors remained in perfect formation, shadows on the horizon, moving with silent precision. Their presence was reassurance, yes, but also a reminder that the stakes were higher than anyone aboard the plane realized. She adjusted the headset again, fingers brushing worn controls with deliberate care. Every adjustment, every syllable transmitted carried weight. It wasn't just the plane or its passengers she was responsible for. It was the unseen chain of command in the sky, the Raptor pilots whose trust she now held. The unknown adversary testing Flight 217. Raptors maintain escort altitude. Prepare for intercept vectors. Do not engage unless I authorize, she instructed calmly. Her voice was low but carried authority, precision, and experience that left no room for hesitation. The F-22 pilots responded instantly, mirroring her actions in perfect synchronization. The captain, pale and taut with tension, leaned closer, whispering, "Ma'am, are you sure about this? I've flown through storms, mechanical failures, even minor emergencies, but this, I've never." She shook her head slightly, eyes still locked on the instruments. "It's not about experience here. It's about survival. Follow my lead. Precision matters more than fear." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. He didn't fully understand, but he trusted her. She scanned the cabin. Passengers were uneasy but oblivious to the full danger. Phones were raised. A child's fingers clutched the window. Flight attendants whispered reassurances. Yet no one realized that every heartbeat, every motion, every breath in the cabin depended entirely on the calm authority radiating from 14C. Her gaze returned to the sky. She had trained for moments like this, in aircraft far more maneuverable than a commercial plane. She had faced threats that were both human and mechanical, challenges that required split-second decisions with no margin for error. She could feel the patterns, the vectors, the timing of the jets, and most critically, the invisible hand nudging them toward danger. "Raptors, confirm visual on potential threat," she said, voice steady. "Confirmed," one pilot replied. "Vectors aligned, intercept positions ready, awaiting your lead." Her jaw tightened. Whoever was manipulating Flight 217's systems wasn't doing it randomly. They knew the plane's altitude, speed, trajectory, and crucially, the presence of her. They had triggered the Raptor response deliberately. She exhaled, keeping her pulse steady. Panic wasn't an option. She had lived through scenarios where fear could have killed hundreds. She had learned to anchor herself, to analyze, to control. Now, all those years of experience converged in this moment. The first officer's voice cut through the tension. "Ma'am, system anomalies are increasing. Multiple warnings. We've got interference on the navigation and communication panels." She didn't flinch. Her mind raced, analyzing every possible cause: electronic disruption, external intrusion, calculated, deliberate, precise. Whoever it was had experience or intelligence enough to test a civilian plane's response under pressure, but they hadn't accounted for her. "Keep steady. Trust the autopilot adjustments. I need the cabin stable for next steps," she instructed. Every word was deliberate, calculated to maintain composure among passengers without revealing the extent of the danger. Outside, the Raptors adjusted seamlessly. The pilots were professionals, elite, yet they hesitated slightly. Recognition passed silently among them. They knew her call sign, Iron Viper, and the history behind it. She had been a legend long before most civilians ever boarded a plane. Years ago, she had guided fighters, navigated crises, saved hundreds of lives in situations nobody would ever know about. And now, the pilots understood why the commercial plane was responding with military-level precision. The captain swallowed. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are or what you've done, but if you're right, we owe you our lives." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she adjusted the plane's attitude subtly, aligning altitude and heading for optimal support from the escort jets. Every adjustment was precise, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but it made all the difference in the world. Then she spoke into the headset again, voice calm but urgent. "Raptors, maintain formation. Potential threat vectors indicate a high probability of interception attempt. Prepare for immediate coordination." The F-22 pilots executed instantly. Every maneuver mirrored her commands, every decision she made guiding their response. Inside, passengers whispered nervously, unaware that their survival depended entirely on the quiet passenger in 14. See some lifted phones. Others clutched each other. A child's eyes were wide, scanning the sky outside, sensing danger without knowing why. Her eyes flicked back to the instruments. She traced each potential path of interference, calculating responses, adjusting altitude and speed in fractions that kept the plane stable while allowing maximum maneuverability for the Raptors. And then she realized the threat wasn't going away. It wasn't a test that would end passively. It was escalating. Whoever had triggered this chain of events had intelligence, precision, and intent. They were watching her, measuring her, testing her. Her pulse remained steady. She had been in situations where seconds determined life or death. She had flown planes in combat zones, guided teams, coordinated interventions, and survived attacks that left no room for error. Now, all that experience converged in this moment. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. The Raptor pilots waited. The captain waited. The first officer waited. Even the passengers, in their naive ignorance, sensed the shift in tension. She lifted the headset again, voice controlled, deliberate. Raptors, prepare for tactical adjustment. Flight 217 is under my guidance. No deviation. Confirm readiness. A silence followed, brief, charged with anticipation. Then the pilots responded, voices taut but disciplined. Confirmed, Iron Viper, ready to execute. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Every calculation, every decision, every instruction had been executed perfectly so far. But she knew the true challenge was coming. The interference, the calculated disruption, the unknown hand guiding events, they hadn't revealed themselves yet. Her eyes narrowed. The calm of the sky was a deception. The sun glinted off the wings of the escort jets. Passengers whispered, cameras lifted. But she didn't see them. She saw the patterns, the variables, the enemy's next moves. The next seconds would decide everything. And as Flight 217 sailed through the calm yet deadly sky, she understood fully. Her past had caught up with her. Her skills, long hidden from civilian life, were needed again. Not for recognition, not for fame, not for applause, but for survival. The F-22 pilot spoke again, almost reverently. Iron Viper, we're ready. Give the command. Her jaw tightened. She exhaled. And with one glance at the controls, the sky, and the plane she now commanded, she whispered to herself, "This ends now." And the moment the words left her lips, Flight 217, the F-22 escorts, and the unseen adversary all braced for the next move. A decisive act that would test every ounce of skill, courage, and nerve she had accumulated over a lifetime. The horizon shimmered with deceptive tranquility, a golden haze masking the tension that pulsed through the sky. Flight 217 continued its steady course, guided by the quiet force in 14C whose presence had transformed the ordinary cabin into a war room. The passengers were oblivious, yet they felt the change. The subtle gravity that clung to her like a magnetic field, the air thick with anticipation. She didn't look at them. She didn't acknowledge their wide-eyed stares or whispered fears. Her focus was on the invisible threat beyond the plane, on the variables she had already calculated, and on the two F-22s flanking the aircraft like sentinels. The Raptor pilots, elite and disciplined, had reacted instantly when she issued commands. Their formation mirrored every micro-adjustment she made, but even they recognized that this wasn't a routine interception. The signals she had detected, interference in the plane's navigation systems, subtle deviations in autopilot readings, were deliberate, intelligent, and escalating. "This is Iron Viper," she spoke into the headset, calm yet commanding. "Prepare for immediate tactical engagement. Threat vectors indicate active interference. I am taking direct control of Flight 217. The pilots responded, taut, synchronized, and ready. "Confirmed, Iron Viper. We're in position." Her eyes flicked to the instruments. The interference was not just electronic. It was deliberate, precise, and increasing. Whoever orchestrated this had calculated Flight 217's route, its altitude, its speed, and most crucially, her presence. They were testing her, challenging her ability to respond under pressure. She exhaled slowly, centering herself. Years of experience compressed into the next few seconds, calculating trajectories, anticipating maneuvers, stabilizing the plane, and coordinating with the escort jets. She had trained for this, lived for this, yet even she felt the gravity of what was unfolding. Raptors, she instructed, voice low but resolute, maintain escort altitude and vector. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. No engagement unless I authorize. Visual confirmation only. Outside, the F-22s adjusted seamlessly, flawless in their execution. Their pilots, recognizing her voice, had absolute trust in her commands. They knew her call sign, Iron Viper, and what it represented: precision, skill, and a lifetime of missions that had never been publicly acknowledged. The cabin remained tense but deceptively calm. Passengers leaned forward, phones raised, some whispering prayers, others marveling at the sleek fighter jets. But they had no idea that every microsecond now, every subtle adjustment of the plane, was controlled by the woman in 14C, the difference between ordinary and survival. Then came the first unmistakable sign, a sudden, deliberate jolt through the aircraft, far too precise to be turbulence. Systems flickered, autopilot warnings flashed, and subtle vibrations ran through the plane's frame. External interference, active manipulation. Someone was testing their responses, forcing them to react under stress. Her pulse remained steady. She had faced threats like this before, planes targeted in conflict zones, lives balanced on micro-decisions, adversaries unseen but calculated, precise, lethal. Now those lessons converged in this commercial flight. Raptors, intercept vectors Delta 7 and Delta 9, she ordered. Prepare for coordination. I need them isolated, monitored, no engagement unless instructed. The pilots executed immediately, the planes moving with a lethal grace that made the civilian aircraft appear fragile in comparison. But Flight 217 was steady, under her guidance, every adjustment subtle, invisible to the untrained eye but perfect in execution. The captain's voice cut through, tight with tension. "Ma'am, these anomalies, they're not random. Someone is targeting us deliberately." She didn't need to confirm. She had known that from the first irregularity. "Yes," she said simply. "They know we're here. They're testing our response. That's why the jets are escorting us. They expect a reaction. They want to see what we do next." The first officer swallowed hard, eyes darting to the instruments. "And if we react wrong?" Her gaze met his, unwavering. "We won't. That's why I'm here. Trust me. Follow my lead." The Raptor pilots were already adjusting to her commands, moving in formation, analyzing potential threat vectors. Then one of them spoke over the secure line, voice tight but reverent. "Iron Viper, the interference is sophisticated. Multiple potential targets, simultaneous electronic manipulation. Whoever is doing this is highly skilled." She didn't respond verbally. Her attention was on Flight 217, on the systems, on the subtle signals that told her the adversary was now preparing a decisive move. Suddenly, a shadow flickered in the clouds, a sleek, unidentified object moving with speed, intelligence, and precision. Not a jet, not a civilian aircraft, something else entirely, a predator in the sky. Her eyes narrowed. Recognition flashed. She had encountered this pattern before, a calculated presence, invisible until it chose to reveal itself, testing response times, gauging control. And now it was here. "Raptors, visual confirmation of new target," she commanded, voice steady. The pilots responded instantly, eyes scanning, instruments tracking. "Confirmed. Target identified, unknown type, maneuvering unpredictably." She exhaled slowly. The situation had escalated beyond passive interference. This was now active engagement. The predator in the sky was testing, probing, waiting for the slightest misstep. and she knew that missteps in this environment could be catastrophic. "Adjust flight path," she said quietly but firmly. "Minor corrections only. Keep the passengers unaware. Maintain altitude. Do not engage unless authorized." The Raptors moved, synchronized with her instructions, creating a protective barrier around Flight 217. Every maneuver, invisible to the passengers, was deliberate, designed to safeguard the plane while monitoring the unknown threat. Her mind raced through contingencies, predicting possible trajectories, calculating timing, and preparing for the inevitable encounter. Years of classified missions and combat simulations condensed into razor-sharp focus. She had faced near-impossible scenarios before, survived, and now she was applying that experience here silently to protect hundreds of lives. The cabin remained tense, whispers spreading, phones recording, a child gripping his mother's hand. But they didn't understand that their lives, the stability of the plane, and the success of the mission now depended entirely on the quiet passenger in 14C. The shadow moved closer, deliberate and calculating. Electronic interference intensified, systems flickering more aggressively. She didn't flinch. Her hands moved over the controls, small adjustments, invisible corrections, ensuring stability while coordinating the Raptors' positions. "Prepare for vector adjustments," she instructed. "This is not a drill, full focus required." The F-22 pilots responded immediately, their confidence in her absolute. Acknowledged Iron Viper, ready for maneuvering. She exhaled, steady, controlled. The predator in the sky had revealed itself. The fight for Flight 217 was about to enter its most dangerous phase. And she, the quiet passenger, had assumed command not by choice, but because the situation demanded it. The sky held its breath. The passengers were oblivious, yet fate had chosen them as witnesses to a silent battle of skill, precision, and courage. And in that frozen, cinematic moment, everyone, pilots, crew, passengers, and the predator above, stood on the edge of a confrontation that would decide whether Flight 217 reached its destination safely or became a cautionary tale whispered in newsrooms for years. Her jaw tightened. She exhaled once more, and for the first time aloud to the F-22 pilots. "Engage with precision, protect this aircraft, and trust me, we end this now." Predator in the sky advanced, cutting through the golden haze above Flight 217 like a living shadow. It moved with intent, not erratic but calculated. Whoever or whatever was controlling it had intelligence, precision, and lethal intent. The quiet woman in 14C didn't flinch. She had trained for moments like this in war zones, in aircraft far more vulnerable, against adversaries far more ruthless. Her hands hovered over the controls, minute adjustments ready, micro-corrections she executed instinctively. Flight 217 was steady, invisible under her orchestration, every movement a balance of physics, calculation, and instinct. The F-22 pilots flanked the plane, their sleek shadows forming a protective wall in the sky, ready to respond at her command. "Iron Viper to Raptors," she said, voice calm but commanding. "Target moving aggressively. Maintain visual. Prepare for intercept if trajectory deviates. Do not engage unless instructed." The pilots acknowledged instantly. Their confidence in her was absolute. They recognized her call sign, remembered her precision, and trusted her implicitly. She wasn't a passenger. She was a force of authority, experience, and survival. Suddenly, the Predator made its move. Systems aboard Flight 217 flickered violently as the intruder attempted electronic interference, disabling navigation systems, scrambling autopilot. Passengers gasped as lights dimmed momentarily, phones blinked, and the child behind her instinctively held his mother's hand tighter. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Fear was irrelevant. Panic was a liability. She focused entirely on calculations, vectors, timing, altitude, and the invisible parameters of the enemy's engagement. Adjust flight path, minor corrections only, she instructed. Keep passengers unaware. Raptors mirror my movements, maintain protective formation. The F-22s responded immediately, executing subtle shifts in position, creating an invisible shield around Flight 217. Their engines roared silently through the high-altitude sky, a predator guarding prey. The captain and first officer watched in awe, following her every adjustment, realizing for the first time that the quiet passenger in 14C wasn't ordinary. She was commanding the plane, the escort, and the threat itself. Then came the decisive moment. The Predator revealed itself fully, a sleek, unidentified aircraft, unlike anything they had seen. No markings, no known design, but unmistakably maneuverable and armed with sophisticated systems. It was clear it had been testing Flight 217's response, pushing limits, calculating human reactions. She leaned forward, voice low and precise. Raptors, intercept vectors Alpha 3 and Alpha 7. Visual confirmation only. I will guide Flight 217 manually. Prepare for electronic disruption. The jets responded instantaneously. Their movements mirrored her mental commands, an invisible ballet of precision and trust. Flight 217 shifted subtly, barely perceptible to passengers but perfectly aligned for protection. The Predator lunged, probing systems, attempting to destabilize the plane further. Warnings flashed across the cockpit, lights flickered. But she remained composed, hands dancing across the controls, micro-adjustments keeping the plane stable. "This ends now," she whispered, almost to herself. Then she spoke into the headset. "Engage electronic countermeasures, isolate interference. Raptors guide and contain. Do not fire unless target becomes aggressive." The F-22 pilots executed flawlessly, forming a precise barrier. One of the jets moved ahead, assessing the threat. She watched its patterns, predicting moves, calculating every possible response, and aligning Flight 217's trajectory to minimize exposure. The Predator tried again, a sharp maneuver designed to force Flight 217 into instability. Her hands moved faster, instinctively compensating, countering the external force without alarming passengers. The child behind her pressed his forehead to the seat in front, sensing tension, but unaware of the life-or-death ballet taking place around him. The captain whispered, almost to himself, How is she doing this?" She didn't answer. Words would slow her mind. Calculations, instincts, training, they were faster than speech. Every subtle adjustment, every coordinated command with the Raptors maintained balance. Every second she held control increased survival odds. Then the Predator made a mistake. A sharp maneuver miscalculated its distance and timing. She noticed instantly, exploiting the opening with surgical precision. Raptors containment vector Gamma 2, prevent engagement but maintain pressure. Flight 217 stable, proceed with intercept pattern. The F-22s responded, precision perfect, surrounding the intruder without firing a single shot. Their presence, perfectly synchronized with her commands, constrained the enemy's movement. Every microsecond, every adjustment was coordinated under her guidance. The Predator hesitated, recognizing it was outmaneuvered by an unexpected force. Systems interference diminished as the intruder attempted withdrawal. She guided Flight 217 smoothly, keeping passengers unaware while maintaining perfect stability. "Flight 217 system stable," she finally announced, voice calm but firm. "Raptors maintaining containment. No further interference detected. Continue on course." The F-22 pilots acknowledged with relief, their respect and awe evident even over encrypted channels. Iron Viper, that was precise, controlled, exceptional. Passengers still whispered nervously, unaware of the threat they had narrowly survived. Phones lifted, recording jets and sunlight glinting across wings. They had no idea how close the danger had been, or who had saved them. The captain finally exhaled, tension draining. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but you saved this flight. You saved all of us." She allowed herself a subtle nod, a rare exhale, though her focus remained partly on instruments, ensuring stability for the remainder of the journey. "We're not out of the sky yet. Stay attentive. Trust the procedure." The child behind her peeked over the seat, wide-eyed. She offered a brief smile, subtle, reassuring, before returning focus to the controls. Heroism rarely needed applause. Some victories were quiet, unseen, uncredited. The Predator, now retreating, disappeared beyond the horizon. The Raptors followed at a respectful distance, ensuring Flight 217's safety remained uncompromised. The sky regained its deceptive tranquility, golden sunlight painting a calm canvas across the aircraft's path. Her body relaxed slightly, but her mind remained alert. Every mission left traces in her instincts, every saved life a reminder that vigilance never fully ends. She had guided the plane, coordinated elite pilots, and neutralized an unprecedented threat, all without passenger awareness. The cabin gradually exhaled collectively, unaware that chaos had brushed their wings. Flight attendants offered calm smiles, passengers whispered, and the child's fingers loosened around his mother's hand. Life resumed, ordinary yet irrevocably altered by unseen forces. The captain finally addressed her, voice reverent. "Ma'am, will we ever know your name?" She shook her head slightly, a quiet smile touching her lips. "Names don't matter. What matters is that we survived." The F-22s continued their escort briefly before peeling off, leaving Flight 217 to continue on its path to safety. She watched their silhouettes fade, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of skill, courage, and the quiet authority that had guided them. Passengers marveled at the jets, recording the scene, blissfully unaware that their lives had hung in a delicate balance, saved by a passenger who had spoken once, commanded once, and acted decisively when fate demanded her presence. She returned to her seat, folding hands calmly, posture relaxed. To the casual eye, she was just another traveler, quiet, composed, almost invisible. But she carried the weight of survival, experience, and responsibility no one aboard could understand. The plane hummed along its course, ordinary once again, carrying passengers who would never forget the sight of fighter jets glinting in the sun, but who would never know the full story. And as the woman in 14C gazed out the window at the retreating threat and the sun's golden glow, she whispered to herself, quietly but firmly, "This is why I remain silent, because when the sky calls, the world doesn't need to know. Only those who survive remember." Flight 217 continued, steady, safe, ordinary to the unaware, extraordinary to the few who understood. And for the quiet passenger, the F-22 pilots and the unseen adversary, the sky had once again been conquered, not with fanfare but with precision, courage, and quiet authority. The storm had passed, survival had been ensured, and the legend of Iron Viper, quiet, commanding, unseen, remained intact.